Good morning. Good morning. We are starting back in our Meet Ephraim series. We're doing short little pieces to digest a lot of information that really becomes important as we continue in Luke. All right. We're getting ourselves to Ephraim and what that is and what that means. And actually, it's a lot of information that is so relevant throughout the Bible that I'm throwing at you here. And it's even relevant to modern politics, believe it or not, and prophecy and the way the whole thing's laid out. So it's important. Just stick with me. We're getting there. I want to remind you that we've talked about Abraham, and Abraham's son Isaac, right, is the only born monogenes between Abraham and Sarah. Okay, yes, between Abraham and Sarah, he's our monogenes son of that long line of sons to carry on this divine election of being set apart for a purpose and for service. People like to say, oh, well, we're set apart and we're the special chosen people. Yeah, that means for service and doing a mission and doing something in service of God. It's not just, you get free shit. All right. So we're going to continue on with Isaac. And just know that Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all the drama, there's so much more behind these stories that I'm just skipping right over because it's not the information that I need to pull to get us to where we're going to fulfill this purpose of getting us through Luke eventually. So just know that there's a bunch of stuff that we're not going through the whole thing. I'm just cutting a check and keeping it moving. So Abraham passes down this inheritance of the covenant, if you will, about, I'm going to give you land, and if when you're my God and I'm your people. So there's this back and forth covenant about this land grant and this seed that will be blessed and making many nations to bless the world. Okay, so all that's coming down, and of course that's not all going to happen in Abraham's time. So these blessings of this covenant and this service of this covenant are going to be handed down through a specific lineage. And the only son so far who's carrying on these promises is Isaac. Okay, now Isaac and Rebekah have, that's his only wife. They have twin sons, and one is Esau and one is Jacob. All right, so Isaac and Rebekah, that's his wife. Interestingly enough, they lived in a town called Bethel. And I want you to I told you last time, write that down. Bethel comes up a lot. Okay, so most of today, we're going to talk about this Bethel place and why that's so important. So Isaac is the lineage, the first son of the heirs to carry out the duty of this covenant, even though there's other sons. He's the only monogenes, unique son, only son of Abraham and Sarah. And it was a miracle birth, right? Because Sarah was too old to have children. Now, Isaac has two sons, Jacob and Esau, and these boys were twins. And Jacob and Esau had a battle in the womb. So in Rebekah's womb, Rebekah, wife of Isaac, right? Isaac, son of Abraham, miracle son, monogenes of all the sons. All right. These two, Isaac and Rebekah, have two sons. In the womb, because they're twins, there was a battle between Jacob and Esau. And it's basically a battle for dominance, a battle of who's going to come out first, who's going to be the firstborn, because there's all these blessings that usually go to the firstborn. It's a thing. So there's this battle in the womb. And it says, God loved Jacob and God hated Esau. Now, a lot of Christian apologists are going to say, well, it doesn't really mean he hates Esau. It just means that he loves him a little bit, whatever. He hated Esau. Now, This does not mean, and the Apostle Paul does a lot of pontificating on this, but people don't know what he's talking about. We're not going to get into that. But just know that any false teaching that God doesn't have favorites. Oh, no, he does. He does. God has favorites. It's not that he just, there's no predestination here. There's divine election. But there's no predestination, meaning God created Esau evil in order to hate him. That's not where we're going here. That's not what this is. Esau, humans are made with free will. So from the womb, Esau was choosing evil. That's what this is saying. Bad seed, okay? The bad seed. And there's this battle in the womb. And Esau was kicking Jacob, right? And so Jacob kind of grabbed his heel. And there's this whole drama about that. So just know that this battle between Jacob and Esau goes all the way back to the womb. Interestingly, after the Babylonians conquered Judah, like in the 500s, right? The Edomites came down and settled in the Hebron region and were there for about 400 years. This Edomite group from Babylon converted to Judaism and became integrated with the Jewish people. The Edomites come from Esau, who comes from the womb of Isaac, who God hated, who's been battling Jacob since the womb. Jacob and Esau, the womb of Rebekah, okay, starts this eternal battle between the people of Jacob and the people from Esau. The people from Jacob become, quote unquote, Israel, because Jacob's name gets changed to Israel. So that's why I refer to it as Jacob Israel. So there's no confusion that I'm talking about the modern nation or any other inference here. I'm talking about the lineage of Jacob as the name Israel. There's also Esau Edom, or the Esau Edomites. They settled over in Persia, over on the east side, all along this region to the east of the Jordan River. They became your Babylonians, okay? And the Edomite Babylonians, who come from the line of Esau, settled in the Hebron Valley. We're going to see where that is, which is a part of Judah, and eventually intermingled and became part of the Jewish people. Not Judah people, Jewish people. Judah are people of the south in this region from this tribe, but Jewish are the Babylonians that came back, that got taken to Babylon, the elites, and returned. That's Jewish, okay? And this begins the eternal battle between Jacob and Esau, or Israel and the Edomites, or Israel and the Babylonian Jewish Edomites, which began in the womb all the way back with Isaac and Rebekah. This eternal battle rages to this day. Now, an interesting thing about this battle in the womb is it's all about the birthright and who carries the promise of being God's people. All right, put a pin in that. And we could just stop right there for the day and have you think about that one. Let's reflect and think, who do you think Mystery Babylon in the book of Revelation would be? I don't know. Let's think about that a minute. Okay. We've got Jacob and Bethel. Remember, Bethel is that place. I told you put a pin in it. So let's continue. Let's go ahead and leave Mystery Babylon for a minute. And we're gonna talk about Jacob and Bethel. All right. So remember, Jacob is one of the two sons from Isaac and Rebekah. Now, Jacob has a unique position in handing down this covenant, this threefold covenant that Abraham entered into with God, right? About the land and the people and the blessings and blessing the nations and the seed. Okay. So this service to have these set apart Hebrew people, because remember, all the way back in the Revelation video, we established that Hebrew means crossed over. And it can be a physical crossing over, like Abraham crossed over the Euphrates, or they crossed over the Red Sea. It also symbolizes the baptism where you cross over from the earthly kingdom to the godly kingdom. It's a spiritual crossing over. James talks about the word Hebrew when it comes to faith and belief, where, this is why James and Paul are different, because James is talking about the Hebrew idea of belief, meaning you can stand on the side of the river and believe all you want, but if you don't do something and spiritually cross over and physically make that move, Hebrew over, because Hebrew just means cross over. If you don't Hebrew over with faith and works, you're just going to be standing on the other side of the river believing in shit all day, and you're not going to get anywhere. So when James talks about faith, that's what he's talking about. Faith and works moving together, because you have to cross over. Whereas Paul is coming from the Greek mindset, and he just thinks about faith as this belief in your head, but you don't actually have to cross over and do anything. So we see all the way back to this word here of what Hebrew means and what that symbolizes throughout the language and throughout the Bible. So Jacob is going to be the one, and he's the first one to father all Hebrew sons, or all sons that are set apart to play a role in this mission that the Bible is written about. So, Abraham had many sons. He had Ishmael, he had a bunch of different sons, but only Isaac was the set apart Hebrew one from the womb of Sarah. And then you get to Jacob and Esau, and only Jacob is the Hebrew. Esau is not Hebrew. Esau becomes the Edomite Babylonians. That's not Hebrew. So, it's funny that today, the Edomites, who aren't Hebrew, came back from Babylon, moved into Judah, converted to Jewishness, and call themselves Hebrew. The set apart people. Actually, they were the ones from the womb that were not set apart that God hated. Just saying. So the non-Hebrews are actually now the Hebrews in our twisted, upside down, inverted world. But we know Hebrew means set apart. So Abraham was a Hebrew. None of the other sons were Hebrews, right? And that's where, like Ishmael, many of your Arab peoples also often say we come from Ishmael. If you go to Saudi Arabia, they're going to tell you instantly we're the descendants of Ishmael. But not Hebrew. The Arabs would not claim to be Hebrew, even though they share that lineage back to Abraham and back to those sons. All right. So then Isaac, right, has the sons. Jacob and Esau. Jacob is our Hebrew, but Esau is not. So now Jacob's going to have 12 sons. And for the first time, all 12 sons are going to be considered and named Hebrews. So all 12 tribes now, these 12 sons birth the 12 tribes of quote unquote Israel that the entire Bible is written about. So all 12 of Jacob's sons have some place in the biblical narrative. Good, bad, or ugly, they're there to fulfill a mission and tell this mega story about the Bible. Okay, so that's clever. Now, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob are going to be known as your patriarchs. So if James or Jesus or Matthew or Luke or whoever is like, well, the patriarchs, they're telling stories about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's who they're talking about, is all of this drama. And there's plenty more drama that I'm not telling you about. All right, so let's look at Jacob in this place called Bethel. Now, Jacob has a beloved wife. I mean, Jacob had the hots for Rachel. Rachel was a hottie. And the heirs, again, of Jacob are going to be set apart to carry out this duty of the covenant passed on from Abraham to Isaac, and now Jacob and all of Jacob's sons. Jacob is the one in the womb who had the birthright battle between him and Esau. God loved Jacob. God hated Esau. Jacob also had a battle with God. It says that he battled with God all night. And he made a vow to God in a place called Bethel. Told you to write that down. That's important. But before we get to Bethel, let's back up just a giant step. Laban was an asshole. And this guy was the father of Rachel. Okay. Laban. Laban, whatever. He was the father of Rachel. But he had an older daughter named Leah. And Jacob was so in love with Rachel, and he wanted to marry Rachel. And so he went to the father of Laban and said, Laban, I want to marry your daughter Rachel. And he goes, yes, no problem, no problem. But in order to marry Rachel, you have to work for me for all these years. And then at the end, after you've earned it, you can marry Rachel. So Jacob goes and he works for him for all these years to earn the right to marry Rachel. And then the time comes to marry Rachel, and Laban says, well, you're going to marry Leah first. And he's like, wait, what? I didn't want to marry Rachel. I didn't want to marry Leah, the oldest daughter. I want to marry the younger daughter. He goes, yeah, but he can't really let you marry the younger daughter until the older daughter's married off first. So go ahead and marry Leah, the older daughter that you don't want anything to do with. And then, like, poor Leah, right? And then work some more and work a bunch more years. And then after you get all those years worked off, then you can marry Rachel too. So Laban's trying to get rid of both daughters here and pawn them off on Jacob. And Jacob didn't have any interest in Leah. And poor Leah, like, I kind of feel bad for her, but she's kind of an asshole, but like Rachel's an asshole too. And so there's all this sister rivalry and jealousy and crazy shit that goes on. But nevertheless, Jacob marries Leah first, okay? And then works a bunch more time, and then Rachel. And along with this, Leah and Rachel, he also gets 2 maidservants. So at the end of all this, working off to earn the hand of Rachel, Laban ends up giving Jacob the hand of Leah, the older daughter, and a maidservant, and the hand of Rachel and a maidservant. So he's got 4 wives. So he's banging all over the place with these 4 women. Now, unfortunately, Leah's the one that's popping out all the kids, okay? And then Rachel's like, I can't give you a son. There's something wrong. And so, like, she's like, go bang my maidservant and we'll call that my kid. Like, there's all this stuff going on. That Rachel's just trying to have a fucking kid and can't. And so we get all of these sons from Leah, and we got all of these sons from the maidservants, but we don't actually have a son between Jacob and Rachel. And yes, there's daughters too, but we're not really talking about the daughters. We're talking about the sons, because sons carry on the promises, the patriarchal lineage, yada, yada, yada. Okay. I always say it's a patriarchal handing down. They're not handing shit to Dinah. They'll stick up for Dinah and like help her out, but she's not carrying on the patriarchal covenants and promises, which is why Mary in the New Testament is not carrying on patriarchal promises, covenants. It's through the patriarchs. So yes, there's also daughters, but we're not talking about them. We're talking about the boys. Okay. Rachel, the beloved of Jacob, has still not produced a son. And that's a big problem. All right. But before we get there, back up. God comes to Jacob and says, I want you to move from Shechem to Bethel. Let's take a look at that verse, and then we'll see where, well, maybe, you know what? I was going to share this tab instead, but no. Let me go back. It's going to take me a minute because my computer's slow. All right, we're going back here. And you're just waiting for me. I'm sorry. Dead dog stuck. I can't even close tabs. So you're just going to have to wait a minute, and maybe I'll cut this part out. Okay, got cut off there. So I'm sorry. I'm going to splice these together. I'm sorry if I'm a little blah. But we left off explaining Leah and Rachel and all these kids, right? And who Mystery Babylon is. It's really no mystery. The mystery is that your priests and preachers can't say it. That's the mystery. because it's just the Edomites from Babylon, Nimrod land, who moved to Judah, intermarried and fully integrated with the Jews, because Jew didn't start till after Babylon. The Edomites and the Jews from Judah integrated into one group. There's your mystery Babylon. I don't know. It's not that hard. All right. They're not going to tell you that, though, which is what makes it a mystery. Okay. I was going to show you Shechem to Bethel. I want this place. I'm sorry, I'm having my breakfast. What Bethel looks like. We're going to read a Bible verse, but instead, I want to show you the map first. All right. Here's a place called Shechem. Now, this isn't divided up by tribes, because we're talking about Jacob, who has the 12 sons, who eventually become the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay? But the sons themselves don't move into the land as the 12 tribes. Okay? We're still before Moses. All right? We're before the Exodus. We're before Egypt. We haven't gotten to all that yet. So right now, there are no 12 tribes in the land of quote unquote Canaan. It's just this land. And I want to take a look at the map. Up here, you've got the Galilee where Jesus taught from way in the north. In the kingdom of Samaria, which is the kingdom of the north, you've got Shechem. Below Shechem, you've got our place Bethel. And below Bethel, you've got Jerusalem. And below Jerusalem, you've got Bethlehem. Okay? All these places. Way down here in the south, you've got Hebron. Okay, this is where your Edomites came and settled south of in Judah or Judea, and intermingled with the Jewish people later on. Okay, way later. But here's Bethel, quite a ways north of Jerusalem. Okay, let's go back. Let's take a look, make sure I got everything on that slide. I did. All right, so Jacob's going to move from Shechem, up here in the north, to Bethel. And we're going to see a little bit of that in our next verse. Share this tab instead. We're just reading this in the children's Bible today because I don't care. The story about Jacob going to Bethel, a very important place that I told you to write down, we see in Genesis 35. Jacob in Bethel. There it is. God said to Jacob, go to the city of Bethel and live there. Make an altar to God who appeared to you there. So now we know that when Jacob was wrestling with God and having this interaction with God previously that I sort of alluded to, but we didn't go deep, it happened in Bethel. This town of Bethel was when you were running away from your brother Esau, because Esau was tracking him down to try to kill him. Okay. Now, out of the womb and growing up, why is Esau trying to track down and kill Jacob? Well, Jacob is known as, quote unquote, stealing. They use the word stealing. I disagree. But your modern Jerusalem-centric narrative goes like this. Jacob stole Esau's blessing of the firstborn. No, he didn't. Esau Esau didn't care about God. Esau was not interested in this Hebrewing over, passing down of this responsibility and service in the mission of God in this Hebrew, quote unquote, lineage of crossing over and divine election. He didn't give a shit about that. What he cared about was he was hungry and he wanted a bowl of soup or a bowl of beans, if you will. And so he was hungry and said to his brother Jacob, hey, sell me a pot of beans. I'll trade you a pot of beans and I'll give you my birthright as firstborn. Because remember, Esau was kicking Jacob in the womb and Jacob kind of grabbed his ankle, but Esau got out of the womb first. So Esau is your firstborn. So he gets the firstborn blessings, supposedly, and all the inheritances and all that of the firstborn. It didn't go that way. So Esau was evil. It says God hated him from the womb. He was bastard. So this bastard sells his birthright, his firstborn birthrights, and all of the blessings and responsibility that comes with that. And he sells it and gives it to Jacob for a can of beans. So there you go. Jacob wrestles with God. And then Esau chases him down to try to kill him, saying, you stole from me. There you go. You stole my birthright. And from then on, the battle between Esau and Jacob never ends. Okay? So God says, when you're running away from your brother, trying to kill you, and he'll always try to kill you for all eternity, this is never going to change. There's always going to be this trickery and treachery and trying to kill off Jacob. This is when you're running from him. And I met you there in the city of, Bethel. There it is. So Jacob said to his family and all who are with him, put away all the foreign gods, make yourselves clean, change your clothes. We're going to put on a new mantle or new clothes, if you will. And we're going to leave here in Shechem and go to Bethel. And there, I'm going to build an altar to God. He's helped me during my time of trouble. He's been with me everywhere I've gone. So they give up all their foreign gods. They took out their earrings and their jewels that they were wearing for this symbolizing, earthly things and wealth and life. He hid him under the tree near the great town of Shechem. Jacob and his sons left. But God caused the people in nearby cities to be afraid, so they didn't follow the sons of Jacob. They let him go, so he's going through peacefully. And Jacob and all the people who are with him went to Luz, L-U-Z, Luz. It is now called Bethel. So Jacob named the town, right, Luz, and changed the name to Bethel. It is now called Bethel. It is in the land of Canaan. And there, in Bethel, Jacob built an altar. He named the place Bethel because God had appeared to him there. That was when he was running from his brother. So this is the holy city. So far, no Jerusalem has come around. There's no Jewish and there's no Jerusalem. That doesn't come for several thousand years. So right now, God's original holy place with Jacob is Bethel. Now, Deborah, who is Jacob's wife, Rebecca's nurse, she died and she was buried under the oak tree at Bethel. And that name's called the Oak of the Crying. Now Jacob gets a new name. Okay, God appeared to him again and blessed him and says, your name's Jacob, but you're not going to be called Jacob. Your new name will be Israel. Your new name is Israel. So Israel's a name before it's a people and before it's a nation. This is why I call Jacob Israel. So everybody knows, I'm talking about Jacob and his 12 sons. So he called himself Israel. God said, I'm all powerful, have many children, grow in number as a nation, as a people set apart. Okay? Different from all other nations and all other peoples, you have this mission to carry on these covenants from Abraham. Okay, so grow in number, have lots of kids, multiply, grow big in number as a people. Okay, you're going to be the ancestor of many peoples. and kings. I gave Abraham and Isaac land. I will give the same land to you and your descendants. And God laughed. And what did Jacob do? I'm speaking slowly because this part is insanely important. This is very, very important. Jacob set up a stone. Write that down. Jacob set up a stone on edge in the place where God had talked to him. And he poured a drink offering and olive oil onto it to make it special for God. And Jacob named the place Bethel. So we have a stone in the most holy place of Bethel. The rock, if you will. On this rock, I will build my church. Oh, it's Peter. Not so fast. The cornerstone that they have rejected. The nation, the stone, Jesus says something about there's a cornerstone that was rejected by the people in Jerusalem. That's the cornerstone. Just there's this thing about a stone. And I find it really coincidental that Jacob is setting up this stone in Bethel. Just saying. Put a pin in that one. Put a pin in the stone in Bethel. All right. What else happens in Bethel? Well, a lot. Jacob and his group leave Bethel. And they're on their way to, Ephraim. And on their way to Ephraim, Rachel began giving birth to her baby. But she was having trouble with this birth. And when Rachel's nurse said, she said, don't be afraid, Rachel. You're giving birth to another son. Rachel gave birth to a son, but she died in childbirth. Okay. We haven't gotten here, but we're going to get here now. The son that died when Rachel was in childbirth was the last of the 12 sons of Jacob. Okay. So as she was dying, she named the boy son of my suffering, but Jacob renamed him and called him Benjamin. Okay, we're going to stop right here with the Benjamin thing, but we're going to get back, put a pin in that. You got to get to the other sons first. Rachel was buried on the road to Ephraim. What is Ephraim? A district of Bethlehem. And Jacob set up a rock on her grave to honor her. And it is still there today. Okay. Now, let's go through the family of Israel, or the family of Jacob and these sons. Remember I told you, Jacob had to marry Leah, the oldest daughter, first. And there's a maidservant. And then he gets to marry Rachel, and there's a maidservant. So we've got maidservants, and we've got the two daughters. And Rachel's the one that is his beloved. Okay? And there's a lot of rivalry and drama going on between the wives and the whole thing. Now, he had 6 sons by his wife, Leah. That's the older daughter that he was forced to marry. Okay? The 6 sons by Leah, the wife he was forced to marry, the older daughter, was Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. These are the sons from the first wife that he was forced to marry by the evil Laban. That's Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Those are from Leah. We're going to skip line 24. He had 2 sons by Rachel's slave girl, and those were Dan and Naphtali. So the maidservant. He had 2 sons by Leah's maidservant, Gad and Asher. So far, we've got 6 sons by Leah, and one of them happens to be Judah, and one of them happens to be Levi, our priests, our janky priesthood. Levi grows into the janky priesthood, and we know all about Judah. Those are from Leah. Okay, so there's 6. We have 7 and 8 by Rachel's maidservant. We have 9 and 10 by Leah's maidservant. 11 and 12. Now, I don't like that line 24 comes first. Okay, line 24 should come last, because the last 2 sons to be born are Joseph and Benjamin. Joseph is second to last, and then Benjamin is last. And Benjamin is what we saw up here, right? Where she died and she had Benjamin. Okay? And that was the wife, Rachel. And they were in Bethel and on their way to Ephraim, which is a region, a district, a portion of Bethlehem. Are you with me so far? Okay. All right. Now, interestingly enough, these are Jacob's sons. Jacob went to his father Isaac near Hebron, because this is where Abraham and Isaac lived. Isaac lived his last breath and died, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Okay. Benjamin means right hand son. It doesn't mean favorite son. It means right hand. Okay. Benjamin means at my right hand, which is interesting. Put a pin in that, write down right hand. We're going to get to that in a minute. Okay. We're going to go back and share this tab instead. There's a lot that's happening in that piece, and we're just getting started. So we've got all of our sons born. We've gone from Shechem to Bethel. We understand Rachel and Leah. And who are Rachel's 2 sons? Joseph and Benjamin. Okay. Now, Bethel, this place where Jacob was putting down rocks, and the holy place and the place where God called him to, Bethel is called the house of God. Remember, we're going to go all the way back. Who lived in Bethel? Isaac lived in Bethel. Who built an altar in Bethel? That would be Abraham built the altar in Bethel. They're trying to tell you that Melchizedek, right? Salem, Shiloh, or Jerusalem. Well, it's Shiloh because that's close to Bethel. Shiloh and Bethel right next to each other. Jerusalem further south. So we've got the altar in Bethel from Abraham. Isaac lived in Bethel. Jacob was called to Bethel and made the vow with God in Bethel, and then moved from Shechem to Bethel and put down his rock and blessed the rock right here in Bethel. Here's our map. This is where it's all happening. Second arrow, Bethel, which is north of Jerusalem. And we'll find out what territory. I would be really interested to know later on, hundreds of years later, after Moses, I wonder what tribe inherits the land that Bethel is in. Isn't that a good question? I wonder what tribe has the land grant to Bethel. Well, we're going to find out. We are going to find out. Bethel is also where Jacob's ladder happens. Now, what is Jacob's ladder? Jacob has a dream or vision, and he sees this ladder, and on this ladder are the angels of God, or the host of heaven, moving up and down this ladder. So the symbolism of Jacob's ladder means heaven and earth are working together here, okay? So you see all of the host of heaven working up and down this ladder from heaven to earth, from heaven to earth. So it's an interaction of heaven and earth, or a rejoining of heaven and earth. Okay, it's this, the veil is represented in this ladder, and all the servants of God and all of the host of heaven, if you will, are running up and down Jacob's ladder, interacting with earth. So Jacob's ladder is the conduit, if you will, between the heavenly realm and the earthly realm, and they're interacting. Jesus, the kingdom is here. Okay, Jacob's ladder. Now, hundreds, lots and lots, we go way the fuck in the future, like 1,000 years, okay? After the road trip from hell with Moses, a lot's got to happen first. But when they come in back into the land from Egypt, and they're dividing up the land between the 12 tribes, not the 12 sons. The 12 sons are going to be long dead by the time the Exodus with Moses happens. But eventually, the descendants of these 12 sons of Jacob are going to go back over and cross over the Jordan River, crossing over again into the land again, where their forefathers are from. Okay? They're going to cross over the land. So eventually, we're going to see how they all get to Egypt. And then they're going to become enslaved in Egypt, right? These sons are going to go right to Egypt. And they're going to birth their descendants in Egypt and become a shit ton of people over the course of hundreds of years. So they have wives and they produce, and they're all in Egypt, and all of their quote unquote nation grows, okay, while they're in Egypt in slavery. Then they're going to come over with Moses hundreds of years later, generations and generations and generations later. And they're going to come around and cross over the Jordan River, which you see flows from the Sea of Galilee all the way down to the Dead Sea. And they're going to cross over. And where they're going to end up, they're going to divide up the land. Okay. And the land of Bethel gets into the hands first of the tribe of Benjamin. Remember, Benjamin had a name change where Rachel named him the son of my sorrow. So Benoi, I think it is, Benoi or something. And Benaoi. It's the son of my sorrow because she's dying during birth. But Jacob said, I don't want him to be the son of her sorrow and the death of my wife be remembered through this birth of this kid. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. And we're going to make it, the son of my right hand. And there's this whole thing through the Bible, if you haven't noticed, about the right hand of God. Jesus at the right hand of God, the right hand be at my right hand, blah, 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 blah. Right hand path, left hand path, right hand. Well, weirdly enough, also throughout the Bible, anytime it talks about this tribe of Benjamin, okay, who gets this land after the Exodus, it talks about Benjamin as being a fierce and mighty warrior. And the warriors, oddly, several places, it comments how the warriors and the archers of Benjamin fight with their left hand. It constantly talks about the tribe of Benjamin being left-handed, not right-handed. Which makes you go, I don't know about that. I don't know about that name change. Because they all seem to be left-hand guys. They're also a tribe. And I'm thinking right hand path, left hand path. Let's get metaphorical here. The tribe of Benjamin also has many instances, if you follow the tribe of Benjamin, and we're not going to right now, but you can follow these tribes and their escapades throughout the Bible. And when you follow Benjamin, King Saul, who fought King David, was from the tribe of Benjamin. Paul, the supposed apostle, was the tribe of Benjamin. And throughout the Bible, between Saul and Saul of David and Saul of Tarsus, through these thousands of years, you constantly see Benjamin as having a night and a day, or a day and a night. And sometimes it's positive and sometimes it's negative. So sometimes the characters from the tribe of Benjamin have a, really positive role. And sometimes they really fucking don't. And they are the dark motherfuckers. And thus the blessing of the tribe of Benjamin. We'll talk about that more later. Just know that there's this whole, we'll just call it a light side, dark side of Benjamin. When he's light, he's really light. And when he's dark, he's really dark. And it kind of speaks to the right-hand path versus the left-hand path. There's a lot of occult that happens with Benjamin. They go to the left-hand path. And it's strange that it comes back to this name change where he's like the son of my right hand. Yeah, well, Saul of David, chasing David around, worked with sorcerers and occult. And we see Saul of Tarsus going on the quote-unquote left-hand path and working with the occult and dark occult and sorcery and fighting against the side of good. Now, that's not every Benjamite. There are Benjamites in the Bible who do really good things. But a lot of the stories about the tribe of Benjamin is really dark and really evil. With the left hand thing. And the warriors, although Father changed the name to son of my right hand, all the warriors are constantly fighting with their left hand in the Bible. Make sure to point that out to you. There are no accidents in the Bible. It doesn't say things for nothing. So there's that. Now, interestingly enough, after the Exodus, this is thousands of years later, right? When they cross over, this land of Bethel is given to the tribe of Benjamin. But they fuck it up. And here's how they fuck it up. They do this horrible scene of rape, we'll call it. And all 11 tribes are so pissed at Benjamites, these group of evil Benjamites, for doing this brutal attack on a concubine. Long story. And they all line up, and these 12 tribes turn against Benjamin. I told you it's a dysfunctional family. And they come to the tribe of Benjamin in the land of Benjamin and say, this is thousands of years after Jacob, right? And they say, give us the dudes that did this. Hand them over to us, and we're going to take care of this because this is not okay. This actually happened during the time of the judges, which I always say it wasn't judicial, it wasn't judiciary, it was pandemonium, it was every man for himself. Every man was living whichever way they thought was right. There was no absolute morality. It was before the kings, before David, before Saul. So it's sort of in the pandemonium, Wild West time. And all 11 tribes come against Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, and demand to the clan, hand over the perpetrators of this horrendous attack and this terrible, disgusting crime, because we're gonna take care of them. And the leaders of the tribe of Benjamin say, no, we're gonna go ahead and protect them because they're in our clan. So we're gonna go ahead and protect our Benjamite tribe, and you can fuck off. This starts a civil war. Okay. And Ephraim, who we haven't even got to yet, we don't know who Ephraim is, ends up being the leader of the civil war. The Ephraim tribe ends up being the leader of this 11 tribe coalition that goes against Benjamin. And as a result of that quote unquote civil war, the tribe of Ephraim inherits or gets or takes over the land of Bethel. Oh, look at that. Isn't that crazy? So this is why I say Bethel's a very important place. And after the Exodus, it goes to Benjamin, but Benjamin fucks it up. There's a giant war, and it lands in the hands of Ephraim, who's the leader of the tribes. And remember, this is where the rock was, right? Where the whole thing started and where everybody lived. All the way back, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And they all built altars, and Jacob put the rock there, and that's where they lived. So everything is revolving around Bethel. Not Jerusalem, but Bethel. All right. After the Exodus, we haven't got there, thousands of years in the future, after Jacob has all these sons, right? They're going to get carried off to Egypt. We're going to go through that, and they come back, okay? You can see sort of over here where it says Gad, I've got 2 red arrows. This is because this is kind of where they cross over the River Jordan into the Promised Land generations later. And they stop at Gilgal, and this is sort of a place where they meet it's like a group up place in Gilgal, and this is where they all kind of pick their land and figure out where each tribe of people's going to go. It's also where they meet when they're going to go to battle, and they have to meet places. And then you have Bethel, which eventually falls into the hands of Ephraim. Shiloh is also in the hands of Ephraim. Gilgal, where they first stop after they cross the River Jordan and kind of regroup to parse out the land. Gilgal's important, and that's in the land of Manasseh. Put a pin in that. You don't know these names, Manasseh and Ephraim, yet, okay? Because these weren't sons of Jacob. So if Ephraim and Manasseh are not sons of Jacob, how the heck are they getting land? Dan was, Benjamin was. Down here where you see Bethlehem at the very bottom in the orange, that's Judah. He was a son of Jacob. Gad's a son. Like, we've got all these sons, but Manasseh and Ephraim are not sons of Jacob. What the hell's going on? All right. I also want you to know, to take a look. Gezer's an important place. Jerusalem's an important place. Jerusalem is in the part of Benjamin. Jerusalem's not in Judah yet. Jerusalem's part of Benjamin. Now, this map's a little wonky. I would say Jerusalem is a little closer to the border. Jerusalem was a border town between Benjamin and Judah. So it's a little further south. But to be fair, it was where Benjamin was at the beginning when we crossed over. Okay. So all of these important towns, you can sort of see who is in charge of these places. And I wanted to point that out because it said, put a pin in Bethel. Here it is. And it ends in the hands of the leader tribe of Ephraim. All right. Here's another little pin when we talk about Mystery Babylon. We've got the fall of Samaria or Israel or the Northern Kingdom. And I'm just going to read this to you. And it says, it appears as though Bethel, there's our town again, escaped destruction when Samaria, or the Northern Kingdom, fell to Assyria. So when the Assyrians came in and took the northern folks and whisked them away to Assyria and scattered them out, right? And they're now in the diaspora. Bethel escaped destruction. There is no archaeological data that found anything otherwise. So you can go throughout the north of Israel today and see all of these archaeological signs of destruction from the Assyrian Empire conquering and just burning up the scorched earth all over the north when the Assyrians came and took them away. But interestingly, there's no destruction in Bethel. Bethel was saved and set apart from the Assyrian conquering, which I find that to be, I don't know, coincidental or not. And we see biblical evidence of this as well. So not only does the archaeology support this, so does the Bible. Because in Kings, 2 Kings, we see that priests are still there teaching after the destruction of the north. Interesting. Sit with that. The Bible says that after Assyria came down and scorched earth and burned all the cities and took everybody off into captivity, the town of Bethel seemed to escape. Because in 2 Kings, priests are still teaching from Bethel in the north, in the county of Ephraim, under the tribe of Ephraim. And there is no archaeological evidence that shows that Bethel was destroyed. when the Assyrians came in. That's huge. We can just sit and reflect on that. But later on, King Josiah. Now, I mentioned who's King Josiah. We talked about him in the very first Meet Ephraim video, right? Do you remember who King Josiah was? King Josiah was the one that I said was responsible for a lot of the edits, the Davidic editing, the Davidic redactors, where they're writing chronicles and they're going back and they're adding Jerusalem all through the Bible. Like he found the Deuteronomy scroll that said God's chosen place, God's special place. And King Josiah's like, yeah, that's Jerusalem. All right, that king who came in and jankified shit. All right, that's who we're talking about. So later on, King Josiah captured the city of Bethel, demolished the altar that Jeroboam had set up. He was the king of the north, and defiled Bethel. He defiled that site. And all of this was prophesied by a quote unquote, get ready for this one, a man of God from Judah. So we have a random, unnamed prophet. Okay, so it's not like Ezekiel said this, or Amos said this, or Micah said this, or Jeremiah. This is an unnamed, random dude who remains unnamed throughout the whole. He just says, some guy of God came and told me to do this. So this quote-unquote prophesied man of God, who shall remain nameless, from Judah, had King Josiah, prophesied that King Josiah was going to destroy and defile the city of Bethel and move the holy place to Jerusalem, and make sure and force everybody to worship in Jerusalem. So when Jesus is walking through and meets a Samaritan woman or a woman from the north, and she's like, well, we are not allowed to, worship anywhere else. We're only allowed to worship in Jerusalem. Everyone's got to go to Jerusalem for the feasts. Everyone's got to do this in Jerusalem. And the Samaritans were like, fuck that Jerusalem shit. We're still worshiping our way over here on this mountain. And there's this big argument as to where you're supposed to worship. This is why. So the Jews hated the Samaritans because they would not give in. They're the original Northern Kingdom people. And they're like, fuck this Jerusalem shit. We're not getting on board with that. And so they kept doing it their way. And then the Jews down in Jerusalem are calling them pigs and dogs. And Jesus meets a woman from Samaria at the well, and they have an interaction. Okay? So I want you to have this background before we get to those kinds of things. All right. Now, the Babylonians, when they came in, they destroyed the city in their second invasion in the 500s. And during the Persian period, Bethel was included into the territory of Judah. So Judah takes the scepter, this place, this holiest place of Bethel, and takes it over and puts it into their own territory. And when it's the Persian Empire, well, the Babylonians come, they take the elites away to New World Order, Nimrod land. They return them a generation later and tell them, you can have, your land back, but you got to control your people, right? Remember that whole thing? And then they made all these janky ass laws. This is where the Jews are born. The Jews are born. The word Jew comes from the Persian period when they returned. So the Babylonians took them away, and the Persians returned them, because while the Jews were away, the people, the elites of Judah, were taken to Babylon. So they're all in Babylon, New World Order, Nimrod land. And then Persia and Babylon go to war, and Persia wins during that generation. So they're no longer captives of Babylon. Now they're captives of Persia. So Persia takes over all the captives that Babylon had taken to begin with, which happens to include these elites of Judah. And Persia says, we don't want to deal with you guys. We inherited you. You're the spoil that we got from winning the war against the Babylonians. So we don't really want you. We're going to send you back to where you came from. But you can't have a king, and you have to control the land. So they redivided up the land, and this area of Bethel falls into the hands of the Judahites. And now the elites coming back are your Jews. That's where the word Jew comes from. So I hope that you see this history just a little more closely. And we're going to get back now. We're going to take a step back because we got through a lot. We got through thousands of years of history during that and kind of jumped all over. And it could be a little confusing for you because we weren't going in order, because I wanted to show you sort of the land and the Bethel and all that stuff. But that doesn't come till thousands and thousands of years. We're like, just skipped ahead way down the timeline. But now let's take a breath and we're going to move back. Okay. Back to the sons of Jacob. Because remember, Jacob was the one who fathers all 12 sons from Leah, the oldest daughter, the 2 maidservants, and Rachel. But even though he has 4 different wives of these 12 sons, they're all considered Hebrews to carry on this story to get us through the Bible. And with that, we're going to leave and take a little deeper dive into these 12 sons. Because we see Ephraim show up over here in Manasseh getting land. But if I remember correctly, Ephraim and Manasseh are not the sons of Jacob. The sons of Jacob so far is Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Dan. Oh, I did Dan twice. Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. Wait, who did I miss? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I missed a son. I wrote Dan twice. So I have to go back and find the son that I missed. All right. Let's find him now, actually. Share this tab instead. All right, we got Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. We have Reuben, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Dan, Naphtali, Gad. That's what I forgot, guys. So this second Dan isn't Dan. The second Dan is Gad. So I miswrote that. I'll fix it for the next time. But if you notice, even with my screwed up list without Gad, there's still no Ephraim here. And there's still no Manasseh here. So how the hell did those people get land? Where do those tribes come from? Who are they? And how do they get land on our map? Well, that's what we're going to talk about the next time. And we will see you then. Bye.